Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's Saturday night, February 24th. This will be the announcement for week 7 of Political Science 1013 for the spring 2024 term. Excuse me, everybody. Everyone, there's been some ongoing events. We talked about quite a few of them last week. The South Carolina Republican primary has taken place tonight. Mr. Trump has won by a margin of about 60 to 40%. And that's considered quite a decisive victory because, of course, it was in Governor Haley's home state. Governor Haley appears determined to forge ahead, nevertheless. Although it's not clear how much longer she can stay in. Most of the delegates will have been chosen by a month from now. There are a large number of primaries in March. There are very few in April, May, and June. So to stay in the race, she will have to find some way to turn it around over the course of the month of March. It looks like that'll be very, very difficult to do. Everyone, we have a government shutdown looming. There's a set of staggered deadlines over 2 dates. There may have to be a partial shutdown as early as this Friday, the 1st of the month. And then 1 week later, there's a second deadline. Parts of the government are funded through the 1st and others through the 8th. Now, we've had this kind of brinksmanship before. When we finish up the course and do our UDOM Congress, one thing we'll mention to you is that for some years now, for about a generation or so, Congress has found it very, very difficult to get a budget passed on time. Really, the fiscal year started back on October 1st, and we are still dealing with stopgap spending measures that have extended the funding of units of the government for a few weeks or a month or two at a time. And we're coming up on another one of those deadlines, staggered on the 1st and the 8th of the month. In about a week from now, and then another week after that. So we will see whether they are able to keep the government running. Of course, it won't be a total government shutdown. So-called essential functions will continue to operate, but non-essential ones will not. So we'll see what happens with that. Everyone, you all will be receiving this message on Sunday. Monday and Tuesday, we'll be having our 3rd discussion on the article by Mr. Diane from the American Prospect magazine. I'll point out to you once again, everybody, as I did in my announcement about this discussion, Mr. Diane is a progressive, and he speaks to an extent for people in the biggest states with the biggest metropolitan areas. He feels there are many features of the Constitution that disadvantage those areas and that render the system less than democratic. You may feel differently if you live in a smaller state, like Kansas or Oklahoma. You may feel that the very features that he is criticizing work to your advantage, or the advantage of your state and the people in it, perhaps. So, it's true, nevertheless, that he discusses many features of the system that have become controversial and have become bones of contention. So it's a good article to look at as we consider the possibility of constitutional reform, which is very, very difficult to achieve in our system. All right, now then, everybody, the exam is coming up on the 7th, a week from Thursday. 2 units will be covered on the exam. Units 3 and 4 on the media and the Constitution, plus some outside readings. Let me begin very briefly before we conclude, discuss what we try to cover in the class notes for Unit 4, which is a quite lengthy set of class notes. And there's a fairly lengthy set of readings from the textbook as well. If you are rushed, I hope you will look closely at Chapter 2, and perhaps not quite so closely at 3, 4, and 5. I hope you will get a chance to look at the 2 Federalist papers that are included in the appendix to the textbook. You can expect a few questions on those on the exam. Now, very, very briefly, what we try to do in the first part of the class notes for Unit 4, we go through quite a bit of American history, and we mentioned that after about 150 years, the British tried to impose more or less direct rule on the colonies, and that, of course, instigated a revolution, which we know was successful. Once the revolution was completed, the government of the United States, such as it was operating under the Articles of Confederation, which came to be seen as inadequate within just a few years. And so a series of meetings was held, culminating in the Constitutional Convention, and eventually a constitution was adopted, which is the same one we're operating under. 7 articles, but 27 amendments since then that have, in some cases, rendered parts of the original 7 articles inoperative, as those arrangements have been changed by subsequent amendments. Now, we try to go through the original 7 articles in fairly fine detail. Then we look at not all of the constitutional amendments, but some of the more important ones, including most notably the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, then the amendments that were added after the Civil War, the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments, especially the 14th Amendment. Now, because of recent developments, we've had to say something about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which originally was believed to have applied only in the aftermath of the Civil War to those who had engaged in rebellion against the United States. But the insurrection provision, it has been argued in court, and there's a case ongoing, might apply to Donald Trump sufficiently to disqualify him from running for president, although I would question whether the Supreme Court actually will do that. Well, we also discussed the 25th Amendment, which makes arrangements for the disability of the president and provides for the vice president to become acting president under certain circumstances, although the provisions of that amendment have been criticized as perhaps operating very cumbersomely if it should come to that. The only time the 25th Amendment has ever been invoked is temporarily when presidents have been going into surgery and had to go under anesthesia, and temporarily vice presidents were made acting president in those situations. It was suggested that it could have been invoked against President Trump at the very end of his term, and that is discussed in the class notes. Now, everybody, along with all this discussion of the details of the Constitution, we talk about the thinking behind it, which is discussed in Federalist Papers numbers 10 and 51, both of which were written by Madison, James Madison, who's going down in history as the father of the Constitution. And those essays tell us a good deal about why the Constitution is the way it is. So I hope you will look at those closely. They are summarized, and some of the high points are hit in the class notes. You can expect a few questions on the Federalist Papers on the exam coming up on the 7th. And that is all we'd better say for now. We also discuss in those class notes civil rights, civil liberties, and federalism, and I will try to address that along with the readings you have been assigned for the exam, the outside readings, when we talk to you about a week from now, which will be our last message before the exam on the 7th. So, study hard, take it easy. I hope you'll take part in the discussion on Monday and Tuesday, and then be working on getting through that Unit 4 material and getting ready for the exam on the 7th. So we'll talk to you once again about a week from now at this time.